It is fantasy football playoff time, ladies and gentlemen. I am super excited. Today, I'm going to go through my running back tier list and wide receiver tier list, rest of season rankings for the fantasy football playoffs, break down some recent usage, the bottom line about these players, as well as their rest of season schedules. I'm going to do a separate video for quarterbacks, for tight ends, and for defenses. That will be live tomorrow morning. I just wanted to break these up just to make sure that these videos were a little bit more digestible and give myself some time to make sure that I could get through everything and make sure that these videos came at you with the proper research done. So if you guys enjoy this video at any point, if you get some value from it, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Now let's get into it. All right, so we're going to kick things off with the running back position. I'm going to basically go through running backs 6 at a time, talking about, the high-end RB1s, the low-end RB1s, the high-end RB2s, and kind of rationalizing why I have certain players ranked where. I'm sure you guys are going to be skimming through and looking for where your players are ranked. There is timestamps along the scroll bar if you want to do that, but please don't just scroll around and then comment down below, where the hell is this player, without actually looking for where he is. And also, I'll try and rationalize why I have certain players where. So make sure you pay attention to what I say about those players. So high-end RB1s, you guys can see the top running backs, of course. None of these should come as a big-time shocker to anybody. The high-end RB1 tier is, of course, kicked off with Christian McCaffrey, who has been the RB1 in fantasy football all season. 23.8 PPR points per game on the year. Second easiest schedule of all running backs during the fantasy playoffs as well. So very excited for Christian McCaffrey. He has, an easy matchup against the Commanders, an easy matchup against the Cardinals, and then also a potential shootout matchup with the Baltimore Ravens. That is exciting for these 49ers players in general. Bijan Robinson, I have at number 2. Again, maybe this needs some rationalizing because he definitely hasn't been the RB2 in fantasy this year. 6th highest snap share at the running back position, 3rd highest target share at the running back position, and recently he's been performing a lot better. 3 of his last 4 games, he's been above a 75% snap share, and he is averaging 21.5 opportunities per game. So we're getting the best of Bijan Robinson. He's a rookie, so you typically see those guys perform well down the stretch of the season, and he has the Panthers, the Colts, and the Chicago Bears. That is a top 5 schedule for the running back position, so that is why I'm very high on Bijan the rest of the year. Tony Pollard is my RB3 in my rest of season running back rankings here. 20.75 opportunities the last month. With Tony Pollard, the reason he's been a lot better recently is he's been more involved in the passing game, and he has a lot of potentially high-scoring game environments coming up. Each one of these games I expect to be over a 50-point total in over-under, and I expect the Cowboys to be implied for like 25 or more points in every single game. Buffalo Bills this week, which I will be actually attending that game in Buffalo. Miami Dolphins in Week 16, and then Detroit Lions in Week 17. All of those matchups are great game environments. All of those are top 16 spots for the running back position in terms of a matchup as well. So great news for Tony Pollard managers. Travis Etienne is my RB4. I debated putting him a little bit lower than this, but I am kind of projecting forward here because he hasn't been great the last couple games, just 17 opportunities per game over his last 5 contests. He's definitely been better earlier on in the season, but Trevor Lawrence is getting healthier, and as is Travis Etienne. He was dealing with some injuries there as well, so hopefully he can get back on track for the rest of the year. Rachaad White is my next rated running back 5 on the year, also running back 5 in my rest of season rankings. He has been a top 12 running back in 7 of his last 8 games, so he has been ultra consistent, super productive, top 18 running back in all of his last 8 games. Definitely the model of consistency, and he is currently second to Christian McCaffrey in terms of overall opportunity share. So he is the type of guy that you absolutely love to have on your roster. You just know you're getting 15 to 18 PPR points every single week, and you don't have to worry about it. So Jahmyr Gibbs, my running back 6 in my rest of season rankings. There was about a month there with Jahmyr Gibbs from week 7 to week 11. Where he was a top 3 running back in 4 straight weeks. He had a monster stretch of production there. He's cooled off a little bit since then, but he is still getting a great workload. The Lions just need to play better. As of recently, they haven't been as good, and Jared Goff has been struggling. He does get the Broncos this week, which should help aid his fantasy production. So the low-end RB1s tier, a lot of these guys are, pretty similar to some of the guys that I talked about towards the end of the high-end RB1s, but aesthetically, I'm kind of just organizing this 6 at a time, so it's easy to follow. Kyron Williams, the next guy we're going to talk about here, PPR point per game average of 20.4. That is second only to Christian McCaffrey. When he has been on the field, he has been outstanding. The Commanders, the Saints, and the Giants the next 3 games, you could definitely argue that I have him too low right now. I could, see him go as high as like RB2 or RB3 in the rest of season rankings with those matchups and the workload that he's getting. But I am a little bit concerned as far as how he can keep this up because, he's a small running back. He's not overly efficient, but I have to respect the production nonetheless, so he is my RB7. Devon Achane, a little concerning knowing that he was outsnapped by Raheem Mostert in Week 14 because I actually, before Monday night's games, I had Devon Achane as a top 3 or 4 running back in my rest of season rankings, but he was outsnapped 45-31 by Raheem Mostert against the Tennessee Titans, even though he outsnapped Mostert 31-23 in Week 13. So I'm not really sure who the actual starter is in this backfield right now. My guess is that Achane will be the starter going forward, but it could be a lot of Mostert as well. Jets, Cowboys, and Ravens the next 3 games. All 3 of those games should be high implied point totals, and the Cowboys and Ravens game specifically should be high-scoring game environments for both teams. So I do really like Devon Achane still. Breece Hall, 7 straight games of over a 60% snap share, averaging 17 PPR points per game since Week 5 as well, which is the RB5 over that stretch. He has the Dolphins, and he has the Commanders the next 2 games, but he does have a tough matchup in Week 17 against the Cleveland Browns. But nonetheless, Zach Wilson playing a little bit better. Breece Hall looking really healthy and really good. And he actually hasn't broken off one of those explosive runs in a couple of weeks. And I think one of those could be coming as well. Alvin Kamara, my next rated running back here, similar type of schedule for Kamara as Breece Hall. He has 2 really easy ones the next 2 games, the Giants and Rams, but then he has the Buccaneers in Week 17, which is a tough matchup similar to what I said with the Browns and Breece Hall. He is the RB2 since returning from suspension, though. He has been outstanding, so good. I've been dead wrong about Alvin Kamara. I will take that one on the chin. I thought he would, look a little bit washed this year. He started to decline last year. That has not been the case. He hasn't looked like the young Alvin Kamara necessarily, but from a fantasy perspective, he has just been driving in touchdowns, catching a lot of passes, and producing for your teams. Saquon Barkley, he would be a lot higher on this list if it wasn't for his schedule. He has the second toughest running back schedule in the playoffs of any fantasy running back, Saints, Eagles, and Rams, but he does have a great workload, 74% of the Giants carries on the season, and 18% target share when healthy this year. So he has been really, really good from a workload standpoint. The efficiency of Tommy DeVito as well as the schedule have me a little bit nervous for what Saquon Barkley can do down the stretch. Then we have Josh Jacobs coming right into Week 15 with some question marks. He is tough as nails, so I do expect him to try and play this week on Thursday Night Football against the Los Angeles Chargers. He's averaging nearly 24 opportunities per game since Antonio Pierce took over as head coach. So, the second Pierce got hired, he said, Jacobs is our workhorse. We're going to feed this dude. And if Jacobs is healthy, Chargers, Chiefs, and Colts is a beatable schedule. Hopefully he is healthy. And I believe he will try and give it a go tomorrow night because Jacobs is just that type of player. My high-end RB2s, and I'll try and speed these up a little bit here. We have Austin Eckler with the 3rd easiest playoff strength of schedule, the Raiders, the Bills, and the Broncos. We don't have Justin Herbert. He was put on IR. He's probably going to be out for the season. So it's likely that 7 targets per game is something that we can expect for Austin Eckler. Easton Stick is their quarterback. I don't know exactly what he's going to do for the offense, but what I do know is that he's probably going to check down to Austin Eckler a lot, and that'll be good for Austin Eckler. Hopefully he can, break off a long play, find the end zone, all that good stuff. Derrick Henry, my next rated running back, my RB 14 on the rest of season rankings here. He has the Texans, the Seahawks, and the Texans again for Derrick Henry. Those are all good matchups and all solid game scripts for Derrick Henry. We know his workload. We know what he brings to the table. Raheem Mostert, as I talked about for Devon Achane, actually did outsnap Devon Achane on Monday night. He has the Jets, the Cowboys, and the Ravens. Some tough matchups there, but Mostert is a top 5 back in points per game this year, and he is always a threat to score. He's leading the NFL in touchdowns right now, and I do think he has a chance to score a couple of them down the stretch of the season. The next rated running back I have here is DeAndre Swift, and DeAndre Swift has been, not great recently, 42% and 50% of the snaps the last 2 games, where the Eagles have been blown out, and we've seen a lot more of Kenneth Gainwell. Normally, the Eagles are winning games, and they're, blowing other teams out. They were a 10-2 football team just 2 weeks ago, not necessarily having the greatest stretch run here. But the Seahawks, the Giants, and the Cardinals are their next 3 games, which are all exploitable matchups against the run and all very winnable games for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I expect them to probably blow out or at least be leading heavily against the Giants and the Cardinals specifically. So we could see a big stretch down for DeAndre Swift. So if you have him for the playoffs, I wouldn't be too worried. He's still the type of guy that I want to put in my lineup. Javonte Williams has the 4th easiest schedule among fantasy running backs: the Lions, the Colts, and the Chargers. 21.33 opportunities over his last 6 games as well. He's getting the workload, and he has a good schedule. Joe Mixon, closing out this tier, has a good workload, and Jake Browning is playing well, but 3 straight bottom 12 matchups for Mixon against the Vikings, against the Steelers, and against the Kansas City Chiefs. So Mixon, he would be higher on this list, but his schedule is pretty brutal right now. The low-end RB2s tier, you guys can see them on the screen there: Kenneth Walker, Zach Moss, Ezekiel Elliott, David Montgomery, Isaiah Pacheco, and James Conner. With Kenneth Walker, 4th hardest schedule among running backs. He's in a split backfield with Zach Charbonnet, and he's still working back from an injury, but he's still talented as hell. So I do have him still as my RB19 rest of season. Zach Moss, it's kind of the opposite of a split backfield here because he's been over 80% of the snaps in every game without Jonathan Taylor this year. 21.5 opportunities the last 2 games. Ezekiel Elliott, the next guy that we're going to talk about, 30 opportunities, including 8 targets last week without Ramondre Stevenson. It's a tough matchup in week 15 against the Kansas City Chiefs, but he does have the Broncos and the Bills the final 2 weeks, so I think he is perfect if you guys have a bye. Ezekiel Elliott should be the type of dude that can really carry you in week 16 and in week 17, assuming Ramondre Stevenson isn't back, which I don't think he will be. David Montgomery, high-scoring games incoming. We know David Montgomery is basically touchdown or bust. I talked about the Detroit Lions. They still have to play the Dolphins. They still have to play the Cowboys. They have some really tough scoring, high-scoring potential matchups coming up. Hopefully, Jared Goff can figure out his shit. That'll be good for David Montgomery. And then with Isaiah Pacheco, he would probably be in the high-end RB2s range should he be healthy, but we don't know when or if he's coming back this season. The Patriots, the Raiders, and the Bengals are all easy matchups if he is back for them, but I'm ranking him kind of conservatively that he might miss one more game and then be back in week 16 and week 17. I don't exactly know what his health status is right now, but if he were to be fully healthy this week, next week, and in week 17, I would put him all the way up there, probably around the Raheem Mostert, DeAndre Swift range. James Conner, the final guy in this tier, 2 of his last 3 games he has against San Francisco and Philadelphia, but he did have his best game pre-bye week, so I'm really excited about what we've seen out of James Conner so far, and also what we could see out of Kyler Murray, Marquise Brown, and James Conner in this offense going forward, because I think now that Kyler has been back for a couple games, I think we're going to start to see this offense pick things up. Then we have some flex plays here. These guys are kind of like in that RB 25 to 30 range. Chuba Hubbard has 23 opportunities per game in his last 3 games, and also over 20 carries in his last 2 games since Frank Reich was fired. It's a league average schedule, but it looks like the new coaching staff is shifting completely towards Chuba Hubbard as the starting running back here. Then with James Cook, the workload has been the same all season, but he is a top 12 back in 3 straight games because he has 16 targets over his last 3 weeks. I'm not exactly sure if that's going to continue. I'm kind of just reporting that the reason James Cook has been better is because he's getting targets. He does have a tough matchup this week, but he does have the Chargers and the Patriots in week 16 and week 17. So even though this Cowboys game that I'm going to is going to be tough, he should be able to get some targets, and he has some easier matchups coming up. Jonathan Taylor, the next guy that I have here, he would be in the RB1s range, realistically, if he was healthy. He is listed doubtful this week with the thumb injury that he's been dealing with. Hopefully you guys get him back for week 16 and week 17 against the Falcons and Raiders. I know as a Jonathan Taylor manager myself, I am very excited to get him back on the field because he was really starting to heat up before he went out with that injury. Jerome Ford, he's been consistently mid for like 6 games in a row now. He's had 12 to 14 PPR points, I kid you not, in every single game. Over the last 6 games, he's gone 12, 13, or 14 PPR points. So this guy's been really consistent RB3 flex type of production. But he does have the easiest schedule of any running back down the stretch of the season. He has the Bears, the Texans, and the Jets, who are all very run funnel defenses. So if you need a good flex option and Jerome Ford's been on your bench, he might actually be a pretty solid option for the fantasy playoffs. Jaylen Warren, we know the split by now between him and Najee Harris. It's, more early down work to Najee. Jaylen Warren's the big play guy, and between him and Harris, the schedule is about league average against the run that they're going to be going up against. But Warren is my preference of the 2. And then Aaron Aaron Jones, he might be higher if he was healthy. I honestly just have no idea what the hell is going on with this guy. And he does have the single hardest schedule among all running backs with the Bucs, with the Panthers, and with the Vikings. So with Aaron Jones, not super excited about starting him down the stretch. And then finally, closing out my top 36 running backs, we have Brian Robinson, Najee Harris, Ty Chandler, Devin Singletary, Ramondre Stevenson, and Keaton Mitchell. With B-Rob, he has the Rams, Jets, 49ers the next 3 games. A little bit lower on this list right now due to the hamstring injury pre-bye. I'm not sure if that's going to creep up again. Najee Harris, basically just copy and paste what I said about Jaylen Warren. We know the split, and it's league average run defenses that he's going up against. With Ty Chandler, he's kind of been one of the better waiver ads this past week. Alexander Mattison hurt his ankle. I'm not sure if that's going to be a long-term thing. If I knew that Ty Chandler was going to be the starter for week 15, 16, and 17, I would probably rate him higher than this because the Bengals, Lions, and Packers are all kind of like league average run defenses, but I don't know exactly if Mattison will be out for a number of games, no games, 1 game. I'm not exactly sure, but I am rating Chandler as a top 36 back as a result. And then with Devin Singletary, he took back the starting job, has some tough matchups against the Titans, Browns, and Titans again, and he might not have CJ Stroud this week. He is in the concussion protocol, so he has to take a little bit of a hit. Ramondre Stevenson, I'm ranking him here basically just out of respect. He might be out for the entire fantasy playoffs. I wouldn't be shocked if he is. He might be back for week 16 or week 17, but it's tough because the Patriots are currently in line for the 2nd overall pick in the draft. They might just shut Ramondre Stevenson down in order to get one of those top quarterbacks. And then finally, closing out my top 36 running backs, we have Keaton Mitchell, who led the backfield in touches the last 2 games, which is good, but the bad thing basically is that those touches were 11 and 10. So the Ravens running backs are not getting a whole lot of groundwork right now, but they do have 3 games against opponents who can score: the Jacksonville Jaguars, the 49ers, and the Miami Dolphins. Hopefully Keaton Mitchell can have some big plays and find the end zone in those games if you need to start him as a flex. But I'd imagine if you guys are in your fantasy playoffs, you probably have better options than Keaton Mitchell in your starting spots. And then some of the guys that just missed out, we have Deontay Foreman, Zach Charbonnet, A.J. Dillon, Jerick McKinnon, Alexander Mattison, Gus Edwards, Chase Brown, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And that would kind of close out the RB4s range of my fantasy rankings for the rest of the season and for the fantasy playoffs. So we are going to jump into the wide receiver position. I know I'm going kind of rapid fire on these guys, but hopefully you are following. But first, with the holidays coming up, it's time to hear a word from our sponsors over at Manscaped. Fellas, we all know how difficult it is to buy gifts for our fathers, for our brothers, for ourselves even. And Manscaped is the #1 place that you need to be at this holiday season. The leaders in below-the-waist grooming have just launched their 5th generation lawnmower to help you or your loved ones avoid another silent night in the bedroom. Get the best stocking stuffer this holiday season by going to manscaped.com and using the promo code BUSH for 20% off plus free shipping. Mrs. Claus will thank you. This holiday season, what could be better than giving the gift of good hygiene plus a couple of laughs? The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is the crown jewel of the holidays, and dare I say it's the best ball trimmer of all time. This electric razor's advanced skin-safe technology is a lifesaver and known for reducing nicks and cuts on Santa's sack. But the fun doesn't stop there. Anybody in the family have too much scruff? Look no further than the Manscaped Beard Hedger Pro Kit and Handyman Electric Face Shaver for all of his facial hair needs. Dad has nasty nose hairs or your brother has nasty nose hairs? Get him the Weed Whacker 2.0 nose and ear hair trimmer. This gift I'm going to wrap right when I'm done recording this ad read because I'm giving this to my brother this year. Hopefully he is not watching this, but it makes for a great gift and it's definitely affordable with our promo code BUSH. Of course, is their Boxer Game Week 2. They also have the Manscaped Boxers 2.0, the most comfortable boxers that you will ever wear to make sure that your boys have a house, as the great Cosmo Kramer once said. Have their nails seen better days? Manscaped has you covered with the Shears 3.0 nail grooming kit as well. Whatever your needs are for your brother, for your father, for yourself, for your husband, whoever you are buying for this holiday season, head on over to manscaped.com and make sure you use the promo code BUSH for 20% off plus free shipping. That is manscaped.com, promo code BUSH, and say ho, ho, ho to a well-groomed mistletoe with Manscaped. All right, big shout out to Manscaped. Again, 20% off plus free shipping using the promo code BUSH. They have the best holiday deals that you guys would need for all the dudes in your life right now, so definitely check them out if you're interested. Now we get into the wide receiver position. Again, I'm going to go pretty fast here, so keep in mind I'm kind of just skimming over these players. Look at the rankings, kind of digest them, and hear what I have to say about the players here. High-end wide receiver ones off the top. You guys know that they're studs. I don't need to break down any usage for Tyreek Hill, for CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Justin Jefferson, assuming he is healthy, which I believe he is, based on everything I've read from Fantasy Doc so far. With Tyreek, Jets, Cowboys, Ravens. That is the worst schedule among fantasy wide receivers, but it's Tyreek Hill, so I'm not really that concerned. I think his health will probably be fine as well. He's been listed day to day. I think he'll play through it. CeeDee Lamb, Bills, Dolphins, Lions. That is the fourth easiest schedule among fantasy wide receivers, so good news for him. Stephon Diggs, tough matchup this week against Dallas. Two easier ones coming up against the Chargers and Patriots. A.J. Brown, middle-of-the-road schedule against the Seahawks, the Giants, and the Cardinals. Amon-Ra St. Brown, also a middle-of-the-road schedule against the Broncos, the Vikings, and the Cowboys. And then with Justin Jefferson, his schedule is seventh easiest among fantasy wide receivers with the Cincinnati Bengals, the Detroit Lions, and Green Bay Packers. Again, I'm not breaking any news, ranking those guys very highly. You know they're very talented. You know they get volume. You know they're all in good offenses, yada, yada, yada. So low-end wide receiver ones, same thing pretty much here. You guys know that these guys are studs, but a lot more nuance to these rankings because there is some newcomers to this area of the rankings since the last time I did my rest of season rankings. So Jamar Chase, again, you know he's a stud. Vikings this week, and then some tougher spots versus the Steelers and Kansas City Chiefs. Puka Nacua, 29% target share on the year. That's freaky for a rookie wide receiver. Wide receiver 10 in points per game. That's freaky for a rookie wide receiver. Washington Commanders, New Orleans Saints, and New York Giants. So two easy matchups with the Commanders and Giants respectively, and then a mixed in New Orleans Saints Week 16 matchup there. But I am very excited for Puka Nacua rest of the season. Michael Pittman Jr., the next guy on this list, double-digit targets in 6 of his last 8 games. He has scored less than 14 PPR points just twice this entire year. So he has also been the model of consistency, basically the Rachaad White of the wide receiver position. Tough-ish matchups against the Steelers, the Falcons, and the Raiders. But Michael Pittman Jr. is somebody I believe in wholeheartedly rest of the season as a wide receiver 1. Brandon Ayuk, the next guy that we're going to talk about here, 26% target share and 43% of the NFL's best offense in air yards. He is the type of dude that can break open a week any given Sunday. In points per game, he is wide receiver 12 on the season. He has the Arizona Cardinals, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Washington Commanders. You got 2 cupcakes in there with the Cardinals and Commanders, and a potential shootout against the Baltimore Ravens, as I discussed with Christian McCaffrey of the running backs. DJ Moore, the next guy that we're going to talk about, a very meteoric rise for him. In the last time I did this rest of season rankings video, he had like Tyson Bagent as his quarterback. 30% target share this season. In his last 5 games with Justin Fields, he is averaging a whopping 29.6 PPR points per game. And yeah, he had a blow-up game in there, but every single game in that 5-game stretch, the last 5 full healthy games that Justin Fields has played, DJ Moore has gone over 20-plus PPR points. So really, really spectacular production. Really regretting trading away DJ Moore in both my home league and the listener league around the time that he was starting to have these blow-up games is when I traded him. So not ideal for DJ Moore. And he is a top 12 wide receiver for me rest of the season. Cooper Kupp, shaky production all season, but he does have some hope at the end of the tunnel here. 8 targets 2 weeks ago, 9 targets this past week. Like Puka Nacua, he has 2 easy matchups against the Giants and against the Commanders this week. And then he also has that Saints matchup mixed in Week 16. But I do trust this Rams offense. They're trying to make a playoff push. I like both Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp for the rest of the season. High-end wide receiver 2 production here. You guys can see Deebo Samuel, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, Devontae Smith, and DK Metcalf. With Deebo Samuel, we've seen the boom production games. They have come in full force, 3 straight games over 20-plus PPR points these past couple games. That is what this 49ers offense can do when Deebo's healthy, and when he's healthy, he's as explosive as anybody, and he's playing with a lot of confidence right now. All favorable spots, like I said, with Ayuk, Cardinals, Commanders, and then a shootout potential in Week 16 against the Baltimore Ravens. With Devontae Adams, we got double-digit targets in 3 of his last 4 games. Wide receiver 17 on the season in fantasy, despite literally everything going wrong. No Jimmy Garoppolo, coaches getting fired, etc., etc. 8th easiest schedule rest of the season for Devontae Adams, Chargers, Chiefs, and Colts. Even though he's been a little disappointing this year, I do think he can finish strong down the stretch and probably be a New York Jet next season. So Keenan Allen, wide receiver 3 on the season, but Justin Herbert is down for the count now. So that hurts Keenan Allen. He would be way higher on this list if Justin Herbert was still healthy. He has been absolutely dominant, though. Easton stick, that sounds like hockey equipment. I literally have an Easton hockey stick in my garage right now. I have little faith that this offense is scoring more than 10 to 15 points per game. So Keenan Allen has to take a hit. I obviously downgraded Austin Eckler for the same reason. And even though they're playing the Raiders, Bills, and Broncos, it's just not the same without Justin Herbert at quarterback there. So Mike Evans, wide receiver 9 on the year with 13 plus PPR points in 6 straight games prior to last week's dud. He had like 2 points, but he was very consistent prior to that. Green Bay Packers, Jacksonville Jaguars, and New Orleans Saints defenses rest of the season. All of those are decent spots for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they try and win the NFC South. Devontae Smith, he's wide receiver 14 on the year. You kind of know what to expect from Devontae Smith. It's a middle-of-the-road schedule, and hopefully the Eagles can bounce back on offense after some shaky performances. DK Metcalf has had some spike weeks recently. The schedule is second among wide receivers, so a lot of juicy matchups here against the Eagles, against the Titans, and then finally against the Steelers in Week 17 is a little bit tougher, but those Week 15 and 16 matchups are absolutely beautiful. So low-end wide receiver 2s, we have Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Garrett Wilson, and Cortland Sutton. Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 25 on the year. Kind of disappointing from what you expected from him. He has been consistent these, last couple games, but he's lacking those spike production. He hasn't had those long touchdowns that Tyreek Hill has had. He's basically vultured all of those away. With Chris Olave, he's got a league average schedule, wide receiver 16 in points per game. 4 of his last 5 games, he's had a top 16 finish, so he has been really consistent and the target share has been there. So he's a low-end wide receiver 2. With DeAndre Hopkins, he's kind of been similar to Chris Olave. It's not a great offense, but wide receiver 18 in points per game this year. He has been more of a spike week guy than what Chris Olave has been giving you, with a slightly below average schedule against the Texans twice and the Seahawks in Week 16. We obviously just saw Hopkins have a great game on Monday Night Football and basically win that game for the Tennessee Titans. Calvin Ridley, as inconsistent as Ridley has been this year, he has had 4 games over 20 plus PPR points, so you want those spike weeks when you can get them in the fantasy playoffs when it counts most. And he's also had 7 plus targets in 9 of 12 total games this year, so he's getting the volume, just sometimes he doesn't play well. Sometimes Lawrence doesn't play well. Lawrence and the Jaguars are fighting for seeding. And despite the tough matchup that he has this week against the Baltimore Ravens, he has the Bucs and the Panthers in Week 16 and 17, and both of those defenses are exploitable. So with Calvin Ridley, I want him in my lineup. I know he's been inconsistent, but I do want those spike weeks if they come. Garrett Wilson, maybe I'm coping, but like I said with Breece Hall, I think Zach Wilson looked not just good for Zach Wilson against the Texans. I think he looked good for any quarterback against the Texans. And Garrett Wilson has been so consistent from volume perspective. He has 8 targets in every game since Week 5. This guy has been automatic in terms of a target share that you can lock in there. He has the Dolphins, the Commanders, the next 2 games, and I think Zach Wilson should be able to move the ball against those defenses. Tough spot against the Cleveland Browns in Week 17, though, so that one might be a little bit disappointing, but I do still really like Garrett Wilson for the rest of the year. And then finally, closing out this tier, we have Cortland Sutton, who has been wide receiver 19 on the season. I bet nobody saw that one coming into the year. 6th easiest playoff schedule against the Lions, the Patriots, and the Chargers for the rest of the year. All right, final 2 tiers, and then we will get out of here. We have the wide receiver 2-3 types. So guys that you probably want to throw into your flex spots or your wide receiver 3 spot or whatever the case is. Most of these guys have been wide receiver 3s all year, and you kind of know what to expect from them. But I'll quickly recap their usage and kind of their highlights this season. Drake London, 25% target share this year. He just had his best game of the season, going for over 170 yards against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All of the defenses that the Falcons play down the stretch are run funnels, which is not great for Drake London specifically, but it is good for the offense, knowing what the Falcons want to do. The Panthers, the Colts, and the Bears, as I talked about for Bijan Robinson, all very good matchups, so hopefully if they can move the ball, that is good for Drake London as well. With Zay Flowers, 5th easiest strength of schedule against fantasy wide receivers, Jags, 49ers, and Dolphins. All of those games could be very high scoring as well. He and Drake London are actually kind of more into the tier that I talked about already, the low-end wide receiver 2s. But again, aesthetically, I kind of just had to organize it this way, so I put them in a different tier for that reason. But they probably are a lot closer to the Waddle, Olave, Hopkins tier that I talked about already. Amari Cooper, Joe Flacco's got the Browns actually passing at a plus 6% pass rate over expected right now. So that is great news for Amari Cooper, but it is a brutal schedule down the stretch. The Bears, the Texans, and the Jets don't sound like a bad schedule, but they are actually all pretty good against fantasy wide receivers. T. Higgins has been pretty brutal all season, I won't lie. He has been probably one of the bigger busts in fantasy football this year. But the Bengals are playing well. Jake Browning is moving the ball well on offense, and I think Higgins will get his eventually. It's a below-average schedule, but I still believe in this Bengals offense to be able to move the ball and score points, so that's why I have Higgins all the way up here. Nico Collins, he would be way higher than this if I knew he was healthy. He would be a high-end wide receiver 2, potentially a low-end wide receiver 1 if he and Stroud were both healthy, but fantasy doctors are projecting that he misses week 15 and potentially week 16 as well, about a 50-50 shot he plays in that game, and then, best case scenario, you're looking at you get him back for week 17 or whatever. So second easiest schedule down the stretch, which is a damn shame that he got hurt because he could have really ran the rest of the season and had a chance to be a big-time fantasy football league winner. And then finally in this tier, we have Rashee Rice, who is on the rise for sure. Career high 82% route participation this past week, and he has 3 straight games with a 27% target share or more. 27%, 29%, and 32% the last 3 games. Rashee Rice has arrived. It looks like Kansas City has found their one wide receiver that they can actually rely on. And hopefully that means less of Kadarius Toney, less of Sky Moore, and less of everybody else involved, because it looks like Rashee Rice is the only one on this offense that actually can do anything. Wide receiver 3's tier, the final tier we're going to talk about here: Jordan Addison, Deontay Johnson, Marquise Brown, Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, and Jaden Reed. With Jordan Addison, he has really cooled down the last 5 games, has not crossed 11 PPR points in 5 games. Tough with Kirk Cousins hurt. That's been a huge detriment to this offense, but he does have a top 6 easiest strength of schedule against fantasy wide receivers. So if Jaron Hall can get it done and Justin Jefferson's presence elevates this offense, the Bengals, the Lions, and the Packers should be interesting for a guy like Jordan Addison. Deontay Johnson, 27% target share since returning from injury. Colts, Eagles, Rams the rest of the year, so he's a fine wide receiver 3. Marquise Brown, been frustrating the last couple games. The connection with Kyler has not been there. Just 17 targets since Kyler Murray came back from injury 3 games ago, but I am projecting that situation to improve because the Cardinals have the easiest strength of schedule among all fantasy wide receivers. 49ers, Bears, and Eagles, all really good matchups for Marquise Brown, so I do think him and Kyler will get on the same page as soon as this week against the San Francisco 49ers. Terry McLaurin, top 12 schedule for wide receivers rest of the season. Rams, Jets, 49ers, tons of opportunity for Sammy Howell to sling the rock, even though Terry McLaurin hasn't been really that good this year. He's like a wide receiver 3 at best. He is still the number 1 of this team, and Howell should be able to throw the ball a ton in these next couple games. Chris Godwin, wide receiver 38 in points per game right now and a 23% target share. He's a fine flex play, but he has not showed a very high ceiling. Similar to Mike Evans, obviously, Packers, Jags, and Saints for the rest of the season. And then finally, closing out this video, we have Jaden Reed, who has shown a very high ceiling this year. I've been really impressed with him. He's getting used on design touches. He's wide receiver 32 on the year, and 5 games over 15 PPR points is quite strong for a rookie wide receiver. So good news for Jaden Reed. If you guys have him, he's a fine flex play. Some of the guys that just missed out on this last tier of wide receivers, and if I did another tier of this, they would probably in this one: Josh Downs, Christian Watson, Adam Thielen, Jahan Dotson, Gabriel Davis, George Pickens, Tyler Lockett, and JSN. These guys would probably be the next ones in line if I was continuing this list. So again, a little bit of a longer video. Hopefully you guys got some value from it. Hopefully I gave you some good news on your fantasy players. The goal of this was kind of just outline where I see the rest of the, running back and wide receiver landscapes looking like for the rest of the year, who has good schedules, who has bad schedules, kind of an updated version of the video that I did a couple weeks ago. So stay tuned again for quarterbacks, for tight ends, and for defenses. I will be doing that video tomorrow morning. That one will be a lot shorter, obviously, because I don't go as in depth at those positions. But definitely, if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe, make sure to like the video, check out the site, flockfantasy.com. Big time aesthetic upgrade coming to the site. Of course, we have our trade calculator live. If you guys are Dynasty players, we have our early look at our 2024 rookie quarterback rankings. First look at this class, and then we are going to be doing top 5 pass catchers this week as our bonus exclusive video. And then next week we'll do pass catchers 6 to 10. So if you want to hear about Marvin Harrison, if you want to hear about Brock Bowers, if you want to hear about Malik Neighbors and Xavier Worthy and Romo Dunze, stay tuned for that. You will get a bonus episode every single week when you use the promo code FSE on Flock Fantasy. So definitely check that out if you're interested. You get a free Zoom consultation if you sign up annually. First priority to Dynasty decisions. Bonus content, like I said. So definitely check that out if you're interested in the pinned comment. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.